Hey everybody, Cinis here, bringing you a new All Clans World record. This one is 54 minutes flat. To the millisecond, actually, I believe. And I've changed the order around once again. Now that Stygian and Awoken are more consistent, I sent them to the back. So now the order is Hellhorn, Remnant, Umbra, Stygian, Awoken. All the Covenant 1 runs, then all the Covenant 0, starting with Inferno because it's probably the most RNG based in terms of seeds. So first fight, I have Vent, which is pretty nice, because it allows me to kill the waves of clergymen that I wouldn't otherwise be able to. Sorry for any slight lag in the footage, that's just kind of OBS's modus operandi, it seems. But I believe they will go away in a couple minutes or so. For now, I think it's still fairly watchable, and I am lucky enough to end up with an energy siphon first floor here. So head to the Forgotten Moons and Merchant of Magic as normal. No holdover, but double stack, which will do just fine. And then cut the cost, and since I don't have holdover, I'm going to emphasize purging and get rid of 2 train stewards at the first merchant. That's mostly the extra gold from the Retribution trial that allows me to do that. So with that taken care of, we're moving on. I get another energy siphon, which is always solid. Fight 2 goes about as well as it can without holdover. And so now with this dupe, I'm confronted with a choice, and that choice is, do I take 2 Inferno Strats or 1 Inferno Strats? And I decide on 1 Inferno Strats. Fool! What kind of weakling uses only 2 Inferno Strats, 1 Inferno Strats? Get out of here with this pansy talk. Who are you? I'm Dark Cinis. And how many Infernos do you use, Dark Cinis? 5 Infernos. How many? 5. And you won with that? Yes! You fool. Link in the description. It's cool. Check it out. Alright, you better check it out. Get him off my back, please. But as you can see, we're taking draw, and yeah, I went whole hog into the quote-unquote pansy 1 Inferno strats, and that paid off here because I got holdover on the Inferno, which is still necessary. I was considering applying it to the energy siphon, that's what the pause was, but I think since I have enough purge, having the actual damage rather than the spell weakness be reliable was probably the right call. I will stand by this one. So here's fight 4, much like any other Inferno run really, other than my energy siphons aren't yet holdover, so I don't really need to care about them yet. Offering token here was a mistake, just misclick or something. So I can just play the Inferno and do fast strats even though I do actually need the siphons, but I have enough of them that I'm perfectly fine to just not worry about it. So that taken care of, on to the next fight. Now I have a choice between Dupe and another Merchant of Magic, and I'm once again going for the Merchant of Magic, because increasing the density of energy siphons is just as important, if not more important, than actually adding an extra one. Especially when they don't have holdover, that's totally the case. And drawing Inferno earlier is also its own reward. I could take the trial there, and in retrospect I probably would have, but I didn't, which is fine. Sometimes it's just hard to quickly parse exactly what trial I'm dealing with. Able to kill the Collector with a Frozen Lance, which is pretty solid. And then just fast strats from here once again, which is always nicer, honestly. And I get enough siphons to kill Harpy floor 2, which is actually not normal. Especially not for 2 Inferno strats, and I end up with an Urchin Spines as well, which I'm always happy to see. And then I'm going to get rid of my Frozen Lances and an Offering Token, and move on to Scourgefell, everybody's favorite. It's not as much of a worry here, although it is still a little bit messy. The Weight of Contrition is playable, but the Ultimate Penance isn't. And I just choose to get the damage off to make the fight go faster, rather than having to worry about Relentless and all that. I can also use Offering Tokens when I get them to clear penances, which I believe I will do on this turn. Yeah, but I draw into an Ultimate Penance, so it doesn't exactly save me. I also forget to play the Energy Siphon in my rush to not deal with so many penances, but I don't believe that ends up costing me. Indeed it doesn't, because Fell's just dead. And that's the reason why I tried to just not worry about the penances and not play them out, because I knew Fell was going to die pretty quickly here. No need to worry about much. So Merchant of Magic, I'm looking for Holdover or Double Stack or something, and I do get Holdover. And then Double Stack goes on the Urchin Spines. Might have wanted to go on the Energy Siphon in retrospect, but it'll work fine either way. No need to worry. With the one Holdover, I do have to play Respite strats. This is technically Respite strats, but it was more just me screwing up the initial play. And most other things about this so far anyway. I'll just miss the Inferno later. I.e. now. And now I'm in Respite strats position, allowing me to hold over the Energy Siphon and play it and a bunch more to deal with Nephil. Would have been totally unnecessary, I didn't even need to play it there, just because of how strong the Urchin Spines and the rest of my draws were, but it does the trick. And now I've got the perfect set of events. So we've got Merchant of Magic, that lets me double stack the Energy Siphon, and then reroll to get nothing. Happens. And then dupe another Energy Siphon as opposed to Urchin Spines, because this is chased and having the holdover is nice. Not sure I would do that again, but it's good for safety. And here's Chase looking for a first turn Inferno, and boy do I get it. Along with a bunch of other good stuff. Since my deck is so thin, I draw almost everything every turn, which means I can guarantee a 3-turn kill just like that. And that's a pretty dang fast split. Much faster than Dark Cinis and his 5 Infernos. But I mean, hey, if his gets the job done, I won't judge. So next up, of course, is Melting Remnant, which is now second in the order, because I find it to be one of the less consistent runs. Although that's not saying much when Umbra, Stygian, and Awoken are so consistent. There's still lots of time differences in the runs, like certain Stygian runs can be like a minute faster than others. But the win is rarely in doubt, that much I will say. So just resetting for some combination of stuff. I check this, can't take Gauge in this run because it relies on 0 cost, but then don't see Burnout Flicker, so I just have to reset again. Which is not the end of the world. A fairly decent subset of runs are usable, and this is one of them. So I grab my Burnout Flicker and move on. This time I've got Engulfed in Smoke, which is a pretty strong defensive tool. With Holdover and a cost reduction, it works pretty well just as a way of keeping Flicker and Co. alive through long, relentless combats. Unfortunately, since I'm up against Seraph the Chaste here, my stealth won't be quite as effective as I'd like it to be. But it'll still do the job. I've got Purifying Cleanse as my Burnout Extender, and Mind Collapse from the Umbra, which is not my favorite card, but still perfectly usable. I take Hallowed Drippings, None of those, and then good old Legion of Hacks. Because, like, when you see first floor Legion of Hacks, you may as well take it, I'm pretty sure. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I think I would actually not take Legion of Hacks again, just because the upgrades I ended up getting were relatively lackluster, and just because Legion of Wax isn't that fast. I do get Large Stone, which is one of the main things you want on it, but adding Heartstone to it was a mistake. I, in retrospect, would rather have had extra attack or, even better, multi-strike on that slot. The extra health doesn't do anything. It's already essentially invincible. Why bother with anything else? But it's alright. I put it on the first floor for this, which is also a mistake. But it's one I'll realize pretty quickly. Clear out Collector and Conduit with those. And then Engulfed in Smoke. Purifying Cleanse, just, you know the drill. Because obviously this does kill via Relentless, because it would be rather strange if it didn't. But it takes a lot longer than Flicker would have. And it's only barely safer, especially at this point in the run when Flicker is just pretty strong. So here's Merchant of Magic. And I look for Holdover and find it, and it goes on Engulfed in Smoke, but unfortunately I don't have the money necessary, although maybe I do after skipping it, I don't know. I can't see it, unfortunately. But in any case, I choose not to put a 0 cost on that, which is kind of annoying when combined with any Ember Drain cards that I might get later. But it's still fine, it's completely usable anyway. And Flicker and Legion of Wax. I am happy to have Legion of Wax for this encounter because double barrel bombs are a little bit scary, and I don't have any way to bring Flicker back. There's a bit of chump blocking I can do, but I'd much rather have the safety that I do here. Burnout and then Engulfed in Smoke, and now I'm a little less scared until I realize that bombs don't care. They still damage you even though you're in stealth. Thankfully, I don't believe a bomb spawns on my floor at all, and enough stealth and enough burnout does the job of killing Daedalus before it even gets to the second floor. None of those rares are the ones I want, although Memento Mori isn't unusable. It's just not really good enough. I've also taken Blazing Bolt sometimes, but I'm not as worried about Frontline, just because I have the Legion of Wax for cleanup. Clear out my Train Stewards, because they're obviously pretty unnecessary at this point. And then figure out what I want to dupe. I choose Purifying Cleanse, which I think was a pretty good choice in retrospect. If I'm using a bunch of Engulfed in Smoke to get myself extra stealth turns, I also need to not run out of burnout during those stealth turns. So that's what Purifying Cleanse is for. Now this fight kind of sucks because I don't have Multi-Strike or Trample or any of the things I would want to deal with the second Light Harnesser. Thankfully I have the Pyre health to just kind of eat it. But it's obviously not my preferred solution by any means. Since the one in the back especially is going to get 2 hits on my Pyre at a pretty strong 11 attack. And that's not great. Definitely not my favorite. But the Relentless goes well just because of the stealth. That's no problem, but I am looking for some way of getting stronger Flicker, and Void Binding is definitely part of that. So I'm feeling a bit better about my chances now. And I'm feeling even better when I see a double stack of Void Binding, and then I go for Holdover as well, and I get it. So with that pretty powerful tool in tow, we head off to fight 5. So with that, we continue. And now that I've got this double stack holdover void binding, what I more need to worry about is reaching through to the back lines, because if there are random clipped guardians in front, I still can't really off whatever's behind them, at least not if it has any decent measure of health. So those are able to escape through and get to the pyre no problem. And that's not great. Thankfully, the damage shield is more than enough to deal with Crystal Cloak. I've got plenty of stuff to clear in the back line as well during the meantime. And so this is a pretty fast kill. But I'm still looking for something. Crushing Demise is helpful. Another Void Binding isn't really helpful for backline killing, but it is nice just in general. Extra damage shield never goes amiss. And I'm looking for something like Holdover Crushing Demise as a way of fixing my backline issues. I actually choose to hold over on... Or no, I have holdover. I dropped the cost of... I engulfed in smoke and then realized I thus can't hold over Crushing Demise, but that's fine. I don't need it that often anyway, only in the double tank waves, mainly. Here's Scourge Crest. I'm using an Ember Drain build, so this sucks. There's really no way around it. Legion of Wax can do an okay job of clearing things once the Alabaster Guardian is gone, but it won't be gone for a while, so this is kind of a bad situation. I engulf in smoke, and then I just throw this out because I'd rather have 2 motes of wax with multiple attacks than I would having just the single Legion. I'm not worried about these dying, I'm mostly worried about just not being able to kill the Penance Givers. But the change does make that work a little better. This is the wave I'm referring to. That would be the wave where I would want Crushing Demise. And of course I don't see it. And I have 0 Ember with which to deal with 3 different Penance cards. So I have to take a bunch of pyre damage and deal with those extremely slow animations. So you can see I'm really scared of Blights for the rest of this run, just because it is so bad. Again, Crushing Demise comes in handy if I wanted it, but I chose not to take it just because everything on that floor was going to die again already. And here's Relentless, Hallelujah, and Fel is dead. And with that, there goes Fel. And here's Furnace Tap, and that's my backline reach right there. With a bit of attack enhancement from Rage or Damage Shield, or... Damage Shield? No, just Rage. I can pop 2 Gilded Wings in a single turn with Furnace Tapped Flicker. And now I have Flicker's Liquor, which lets me play out things like Blights that I couldn't otherwise, and then I dupe Furnace Tap and take Burnout 3. And now I'm feeling much more confident. Although Chaste's ability to cleanse things is a little worrisome. I do know I have, as a secondary floor, the Legion of Wax and its spawns, though, and that makes it likely that I won't have to worry about the cleansing as much as I otherwise would, because Seraph will split its time between the 2 floors. Which is definitely preferable. I'm very glad that that's how it worked out. And that's a good reason to take Legion of Wax, although it's also a good reason to take, I think, literally anything else. No need to hold over stealth when I have this much damage shield, but I just do it anyway, because it's a pretty easy play. And I'm starting to realize that Crushing Demise is getting in the way of my mash. Meaning just that I have to avoid playing Crushing Demise on the same floor where I'm buffing Flicker, because then he just dies and I still have no reform, so I can't get him back. Heal the Pyre, Purge 2, and then figure out what upgrades I want. My normal strat is to double Emberstone Furnace Tap, but I have ways around it like Flicker's Liquor that I might consider using. I end up deciding to go ahead and do the double Emberstone thing, and then remove Consume instead. And that's because I have Magic Power upgraded Mind Collapses that I can use to get 2 energy out of 0, As promised, I purge Crushing Demise, but I've decided not to purge anything else just because I don't think that's necessary. Once I get the Void Bindings, I don't really care about the rest of my deck so much. So with that, here's Chased. Flicker, and then Legion of Wax. And then just clear out a bunch of dregs. So my deck is a little thinner. And we're just kind of off to the races at this point. No need to use the Consume Mind Collapse here, because I've already got the energy I need. And now I've already got one Furnace Tap out. And because I have Mind Collapse again, here's the second one. And now with the Void Bindings and Engulfed in Smoke, I'm pretty much good to go. Just need to play all those out every turn. And that's just a simple matter of mashing the keys. Here's Mind Collapse again, pulling its weight to give me another stack of Multi-Strike. I just use it to also clear the backlines, which is in itself plenty nice. Again, get Ember Drain, but Mind Collapse saves me. This was my plan. So I'm very glad it worked out, and Seraph dies in a quick 2 phases, and we're moving on to Umbra. Umbra, of course, is just the simple Void Binding run. It looks much like what I just did with Remnant, actually. With the exception of I already have Trample built in, so I don't necessarily need Furnace Tap. Just enough raw attack does the job, so I switch Umbra to Melting Remnant. With the most minor optimization you can possibly imagine, which is that switching clans now requires only a single click for that particular run. That's like, I'm sure, like half a second of time save, and I get Void Bindings on my 3rd reroll, along with Guild Marker, and all that is excellent. I'm very happy to see it. And it's up against Temperate, which I think is the easiest of the 3 bosses for Void Binding. I take Retribution because I know my coins are going to go a little farther as a result of Guild Marker. And with that, here we go. Play a Dreg to kill a Collector. And I do have to Purify and Cleanse to ensure I have enough health to kill Chains with this new Shrylon. And even then, Penumbra dies on the last phase. Take none of those and none of those. And then I'm hoping for double stack or holdover. Grab the Forgotten Boons and go. And you can see how cheap everything is. No double stack and no holdover. That is a 1 in 6 chance. So not implausible, but still quite annoying. So instead I decide to go for Pure Purging and purge out 3 cards. That way I can just get my Void Bindings back quickly enough to not really care that I don't have holdover. That still takes a while to get off the ground, and it makes this fight in particular just a little bit messy. I get to kill the Collector again, though, which I'm happy about. And again, I have to use Purifying Cleanse to survive the boss, and I actually still don't survive the boss, even after I chump block with a Dreg, but that's fine. That sort of thing happens, and I've got Pyre health for a reason. And, well, this fight is kind of just it, honestly. If you don't see holdover or what have you, it's a bit scary. So I still am kind of on the back foot here, but I do have a duplication now. And that makes life a bit easier, and then I check for the quintuple dupe event, and I can't take it. Abandoned Staff, maybe. Calcified Ember, maybe, but it's just not worth the risk, in my opinion. So here's Daedalus. Again, it's a little scary because I only have a couple Void Bindings. So I just need to make sure I don't die, mainly. And I choose to start using Purifying Cleanses because I have a feeling I'm going to be taking a bunch of damage, and thus I'm going to be wanting to use Purifying Cleanse. So I just decide to start the burnout stacking early, and this ends up being a pretty good choice, I believe. I've got most of the damage I need to make this fight happen. Mainly, I'm lacking just defensive potential. But, again, Burnout stacking was a good choice because I've got 5 Burnout and can Damage Shield and Purifying Cleanse to get most of the way to my goal. And then a simple morsel jeweler chunk blocking will do the rest. And now Furnace Tap once again makes life a little bit easier, because now I have the offensive potential necessary to deal with opposing units pretty much regardless of what they are. The main issue now is just, again, defending. So I'm looking for holdover once again, and once again I am not finding it. Again, my strategy is to drop the cost of Furnace Tap to 0, since I'm generally playing a lot of Ember Drain before it. And I'm going to do that here and choose to double stack the Void Binding after a little bit of thought, because I think the damage shields end up being more important. And I will stand by this decision. I think it's good to be safer and not die than it is to kill the boss just that little bit faster. Plus, I'm more often able to play the Furnace Tap when it's 0 cost. No longer do I need to Purify and Cleanse because I've got a double stacked Void Binding. Instead I use it on the Dreg. I'll just stop using it after this fight, and I think it's one of my Purge targets later. But you can see I'm already scaled up to the point where this fight is basically just trivial. Which is good. It's a stark departure from the last couple, but in a few phases and we're good to go. I take basically no Remnant cards. Theoretically, I would take Reason removal, but it's not worth checking to see it because you can kind of play around it anyway. I just grab the artifact. Boon of the Blacksmith isn't the worst thing in the world. But I didn't really know what else to do there. It certainly wasn't necessary to take the artifact. I will not lie and say it was. But it worked out fine. Have to set up floor 2 for this fight because of stealth. Nothing you can do can get around that. But it's fine. Got Furnace Tap, got my Void Binding, I'm happy. Plus it lets me kill Collector where I might not otherwise have been able to. Again, I'm deciding against playing Purifying Cleanse. I mean, why would I, considering I've got enough damage shield to last most of the rest of this fight. And my attack number is so big and has multi-strike to the point where it's kind of just unreadable. But it's a pretty big one, as you can see. And that takes care of Fight 5. Coming up is Fell, and I'm praying to not see Scourge Crest for the 3rd run in a row. Thankfully, my prayer is answered. That is Wrath Crest. I'm not sure what to do here, but I opt for the duplication, which I think was the right call. Getting an extra Void Binding, not Furnace Tap. All you really need is 2 strikes. And sometimes you don't even need that with enough Void Bindings. This run does not really have enough Void Bindings. So I need to kind of catch up on that front. But I think we're okay at this point. I'm sweating a little bit less. So with all these Void Bindings, I'm pretty much good to go. I'm landing substantial damage on Fell, even through a bunch of enemies. And then I accidentally play Purifying Cleanse, and suddenly things get a little more complicated. Because I need to play them whenever I see them now to make sure Penumbra doesn't die of burnout and immediately lose me the run. But I do manage to accomplish that task, and Fell dies easily. Don't take any of these. I choose to take Capacity to make sure Monstrous Penumbra can fit. I feel like I have this, like, crippling fear of losing a really good run to just not taking Capacity and upgrading to Monstrous 3. And I feel like one of these days it's gonna happen to me. But hopefully it just won't, because I will remember every time. But that seems dubious, honestly. So I just purge here. Pretty standard stuff. I do think targeting the Purifying Cleanse over Packed Morsels would have been worthwhile. But, as it is, it's fine. It works perfectly well. Well, I believe I actually end up resetting this fight because the Shadewing damage gets a little too high. Or maybe it's a reset in Stygian, I forget which. I think it is in Stygian, I think I have to reset Seraph. This fight is fine. Definitely do not need to have worried about it. I've already got a solid, like, 300 attack. 400 attack now, with a couple of multi-strike. And that is more than sufficient to absolutely destroy Nephil. And then we are moving on to Seraph, who is much like any other fight in this run. Just set up floor 1 and destroy everything with Void Bindings. And I do choose to remove the Purifying Cleanses because they mess up my mash more than the alternative. And this time I do dupe Furnace Tap because I think I'm good to go with 3 double-stack Void Bindings. Since my deck is thin enough that I can play them pretty reliably, I'm not worried about much at this point, actually. So here's Seraph. Starting out first floor, and I've got both my Furnace Taps floor 1, which means I can land quite a bit of early damage on him. Always happy to see that. And now I'm drawing my whole deck every turn, which means 3 Void Bindings every turn, and here comes Seraph back down again, and he's taking 800 damage. You can tell this run's going exceptionally well, just because of the pure offensive scaling I have, to the point that Seraph is already dead. And I actually split a little late because I had no idea that was coming. I did not expect it. Because normally I do have to wait till all the way up to Relentless 1 in some runs in order to kill Seraph outright. But here I just got him straight up. No need for anything else. So now we're moving on to Stitching with a 57-second lead over my previous PB, which was 10 seconds off the world record at the time. Never Nathaniel's 55-10. That was kind of agonizing, I have to say. But I persevered, and obviously it paid off, otherwise I wouldn't have uploaded this video. I would have uploaded the 55-20 instead. Can't take Volatile Gauge in Stygian, it's just not worth it. And so I choose Chillwind as normal, since that's the entire premise of this run, really. I decided not to take the trial just because Tethys dies and it's too slow. And as we all know, slow is bad. Now I can actually survive a direct hit from this with Tethys, and so I choose to, just for, again, the sake of speed. Play a Train Steward should only have been 1, so I could have gotten Collector with Frozen Lances, but this worked out alright, so I won't beat myself up. I do make plenty of minor mistakes, and honestly the secret to this run is to keep your mistakes minor. As weird as that sounds. Because trying to play perfectly is just not happening over the course of a 50-plus minute run. You will make mistakes, and you're just going to have to deal with them. That is my advice to you if you want to play this. I just don't have enough money for that, which is another fairly substantial mistake. But I didn't realize, again, because my live split is in a bit of a weird spot. I figured out where to play, and the correct answer is first floor, because it's, I think, actually the only floor I can survive. No, I can survive on third floor, too, but it's not as good. I have Awake now, which is good for early fights like this one. What's happening? Got a bunch of lag in my recording, sorry. Not sure if that'll be there for you or not. I hope it isn't. But I get Wildwood Sap, which isn't even really that necessary for an Awake build, but it's a decent insurance policy. I don't mind taking this, even in retrospect. And now I'm looking for my actual set of unit upgrades. After the last one just kind of flopped, I'm happy to see Large Stone. More base health is nice, and then Spikes 4 is good to kill early backliners. So I'm pretty happy with my upgrades there. Then I take the Caverns in case it's something useful, which it sort of is. I have to take a moment to figure out what I'm actually going to do, but Wildwood Sap is a perfectly respectable use of the 5-dupe. It makes pretty much all Relentless for the rest of the game a cakewalk. I have enough regen to absolutely destroy it. The hardest part of this fight now becomes the early game, to ensure the Hollow doesn't immediately die and gets enough spikes to kill what it needs to. In this fight, that's not a problem because everything has 1 health. So, Thorn Hollow had enough spikes with no Rejuvenate procs. I just play out all my saps much as you'd expect. I have Awake for a bit of extra raw healing. And you can see I do have a lot of regen, but not as much spikes as a standard Thorn Hollow would have by this time. That's not a huge deal. Certainly works well here. I take Hoarfrost Effigy for flying bosses. This turns out to be a relatively weak pickup for much of this run. And the reason why it's weak is because I don't have backline reach to apply Frostbite to the flying bosses yet. So my 40 Frostbite can't really go on Fel. Or 20 Frostbite, I think, at this point in the run, sorry. I take double stack on Awake for extra regen. In retrospect, I would not have done this. I think I rather would have purged. But it worked out fine. So yeah, Effigy was actually a pretty weak pickup here for most of the run, but it definitely made itself useful when it came time for Seraph. Because then I had the way to get Frostbite onto the flying boss, and then he died. Here's a fairly simple setup, but unfortunately the spell shield kind of bit me in the butt here, because I didn't have the frozen lances necessary to snipe that Penance Giver. I don't know what its actual name is off the top of my head. I think it's Absolver? Yeah, that's right. Absolver. But you can see I've got more than enough regen to deal with, I think, any boss in the game. And so we're taken care of there. I take another Effigy, because I hadn't realized I couldn't really use them against Fel yet, so I was hoping it would save me against both Fel and Seraph, though that didn't turn out to be the case. So now I just head to the right, realize I've got full slots on the Thorn Hollow, and thus skip the unit merchant, and move on. Not ideal, but again, it's fine. Here's Sycophants. With my spikes, I am able to kill them easily. And the spikes are also nice for these particular fights, because they kill the frontline weak enemies before Tethys has to attack, which is absolutely lovely. Because it means I can kill that Clip Guardian in the back easily. Now, even Harpy doesn't do much to this, even with the Sycophant, just because I have so much regen and so many spikes. Pretty much no need to worry about that fight at all, actually. Although Sorrow of Sorrows would have been a little bit scary. Even she, I'm not sure what the gender on that boss is. I take another Effigy here, I believe. Which I'm not sure I would do in retrospect, but it's certainly what I chose. And I was totally going into this fight expecting to be able to land a Frostbite on Fel. But because I had to set up floor 1 and deal with all the Scourge enemies, that turned out to not be the case. And I just had to beat her the old-fashioned way, which I did do. I didn't need to worry about that much. But not being able to Effigy Fel was not my favorite. So I just had to clear out the penances here, but I wasn't really worried about Relentless, because I knew it would go fine. I remember saying to myself, yeah, this is just a normal fight as opposed to an Effigy slapfest, but a normal fight works fine. You can totally win that. And that is what happened. Still not being able to land any Frostbite on Fel means I just have to use my Thorn Hollow and Rejuvenate procs to do the job like it normally would. And that works fine. Fel's still totally dead. So with that, I take no rares and then opt for... what do I opt for? Energy, I think. Which I would probably stand by, as it allows me to play more of my healing and effigies on the same turn. And those effigies really are just an investment for Seraph. I take holdover, again, for Seraph, and then drop the cost of this one so that it's free. Purge out a couple lances, it's mostly standard stuff. With a nice, smooth round of Enter Confirmation. Always lovely. And then here I'm going to remedy my mistake / oversight from the last round, and rather than opting for the full Frostbite path, I'm going to take the sweep. And that's mostly just to ensure I can land a, like, Seed Frostbite onto Tethys. I think this is the fight I end up having to reset, because I don't have a way of making Thorn Hollow live. So I cut my losses, and since Tethys is going to die, there's no way I can save her. I just choose to reset the fight. About a 20 to 30 second time loss, but this is a good enough run that I don't want to lose it. So I persevere and set up on second floor instead. And that works just fine. All the Wildwood Sap I can apply without dying allows me to have a pretty solid health pool for most of this fight. I do have a bit of a midline issue with the frontline then Gilded Wing setup, but I do have the Effigies and the Pyre health to deal with that, so I'm not too worried about it, but I do have to make sure I play these out. Here that actually didn't make a difference because the Gilded Wing just barely survived. But it ended up okay, so I can't really worry about it too much. So, Living Armor is totally dead. He doesn't have enough scaling to get around the regen, even though his attack scales up pretty fast considering he's taking hits from Spikes, Frostbite, and both units every turn. Not a great setup normally, but good enough here. And now here's Seraph, who actually is going to be the easiest fight of this run, because I have so many Hoarfrost Effigies I've just been kind of holding in my deck for this entire time. So as soon as I sweep Seraph, and I set up to specifically sweep Seraph in the first turn, I can immediately double and redouble his Frostbite to a ridiculous degree. A mere 19 Frostbite becomes 38. And I play Sap just to make sure Tethys is safe to clear non-boss. This doesn't work that well, but it ends up fine. 74 Frostbite now. And then I'm going to draw like 2 or 3 of them in the same turn. And suddenly, Seraph is dead. Just like that. And now I'm fully 3 minutes ahead. So any pretty standard Awoken run will do the trick to get me a world record at this point. And so that's really what I'm just hoping for. It's pretty hard to die outright in Awoken, but it's totally feasible to just have a slow run. That totally happens. So I kind of go into like single clan mode here, knowing that I'm more or less safe from actually dying. I just go like nose to the grindstone, fast mechanics, snap decisions. Just in a push to actually land the world record, because this is my 3rd full run tonight. I had a 55-50-ish, and then a 55-20, and then this run. I once again have to reset out of the first Temperate I see. I've noticed Temperate has a pattern of not giving me the champion I want on the first try, and then not showing up for like the next 10 resets. But there he is, in decent time this time. And it might have been worth taking Guru's Goad, and I think I thought that at the time, but it ended up working out just fine without it. Retribution has no drawback other than the trial icon, so I choose to take that. And just kind of standard rejuvenate stuff from here. And actually the mechanics in this fight aren't even that fast. But they are fast enough, I would say, just because it's simple enough. Then I can't really take any of those, and Hellhorn is almost always an auto-skip in this run. The exception being Hellhorn unit banners, which are useful as a backliner. I choose not to take the Awoken unit banner just because I don't think it will give me stuff that's as good as immediately spamming purges. Getting rid of all of those torches was like top of my list for this run to make sure I have the rejuvenate procs per turn necessary to just clear out the enemy without having to go through extra combat animations that I don't have to. So I was just kind of fiending the purges in this run. And that worked out well. I take Mark of Invasion for more coins just to purge or upgrade cards. Pretty standard. I probably should play 2 Train Stewards rather than the Torch here. But I'm going fast, trying to just go fast, not necessarily avoid mistakes while doing so. And so that's just kind of my paradigm for the rest of this run. Keep your mistakes to a minimum, or at least keep them minor, and just go is more my strategy. So I take Sap Tap as a de facto +1 draw per turn, and then Shattered Shell to clear backlines, so it's a pretty nice ability. And then I get a Wildwood Sap out of the event, which makes it completely worthwhile. It's a good safety net against Daedalus especially. He has a habit of killing you if you don't have enough regen. And I don't want to deal with that, so I'm glad to see the Wildwood Sap. Here's Explosive Sigil, which is one of the scarier ones, although nowhere near as scary as Double Barrel. And I'm just hoping I get enough regen and what have you to deal with all these clergymen and bombs. And it turns out that I do. You'll notice Sap Tap is messing with my mash here a little bit, but that issue will be remedied once I get rid of the superfluous cards that I don't want. And for now, I can start 1 card to the right of where I would otherwise start my mash and be fine. So we're good to go here. We have enough regen, and the Shattered Shell takes care of business. And I look for rares, choose none of them, and then avoid those as well. So I'm actually working with relatively little here. Compared to most Awoken runs, I'll usually have something like a consume-removed Wildwood Sap or a Spreading Spores by now. But I don't really need those things, they're kind of a luxury. I can win the run with my starting restores and nothing else if I need to. I hold over the 0-cost restore as a sort of energy balancing mechanism, just to ensure that I don't have too costly energy restores in my hand every turn. The 0-cost one is just to make sure I have 4 energies only worth of restores in my hand, regardless of what else I draw. Because the ideal draw is, of course, 5 restores. And if all of them are 1 cost, I can't play them all because I only have 4 energy. And at this point, I don't really care if I Torch Sentient because I'm likely to just heal it up. So I just straight up mash 1 the entire time. And that's plenty fast, obviously. And here is Porcupine. He's not going anywhere. Obviously, the Shattered Shell is a good way of countering him. And that's taken care of. Skip all those, skip everything from Hellhorned, and move on. Like, there's legitimately nothing from the allied clan packs you want, I'm pretty sure. I cannot think of a single thing. Just go here for a Purge. Because they are that important. This actually should have been a Train Steward, not a Torch, because I would have been able to redraw everything had I kept the Torch. But as it is, it's fine. This run still did the job. I can set up first floor here regardless of the stealth because Rejuvenate doesn't apply to stealth. Or I guess stealth doesn't apply to Rejuvenate. Again, sorry for how laggy this footage is. I will try to figure out why OBS is at fault here, because it definitely is. This doesn't happen when I use Shadowplay, which is my recording software for single clan runs that don't use LiveSplit. And if any of you happen to know why this might be the case, please do enlighten me, because I would love to know. Soros does not die here, and I'm kind of panicking until I see that they end up on relatively low health. And I know from my Inferno runs that this is safe. I don't need to worry about it. Can't do anything to do extra damage because, well, I just can't. I don't need any of those, and again, skip everything from Hellhorned. But I'm reasonably confident, and then I see Scourge Crest, and then I'm no longer confident. That's how much of these runs go. I choose to dupe the 0-cost holdover restore, because I know I'm going to need another average energy cost reduction sort of deal coming up in this fight. And that turns out to have been a good call. Thankfully, Shattered Shell, once it gets off the ground in terms of scaling, is an excellent secondary unit for this fight. But only in turn 2, because in turn 1, it can't kill the 5 health enemy. Damage doesn't recalculate after a Slay proc. It stays the same across everything. But now it can, and now it's getting a bunch of Slay procs and scaling to the point where it can kill the Absolvers reliably, and I'm already landing damage on Fel, which is always a happy sign. Now it's just kind of a simple restore mash. And continues to be for much of the rest of this. My game isn't actually this laggy, I would just like to say. It's just OBS not liking all the animations on screen or something, I don't know. I'll figure out why that is, and I will hopefully fix it. I take Wildwood Tome so that the Shattered Shell can have Quick, which is a plenty handy upgrade that will allow me to get Rejuvenate procs onto the bosses easier. Take Rejuvenate 3 and nothing else. Because again, I'm kind of going into single clan mode. Anything I don't think I need, I'm just not going to take, even if it might be helpful. Because I'm on the second to last fight, and I'm a couple seconds away from world record. A bit worried about these, just because the Shadewings do a lot of fire damage, but as soon as I can get scaling off the ground on Shatter Shell, or just enough Rejuvenate procs, which is what happens, I'm good to go. To the point where I can just obliterate the Shadewings. This is definitely preferable, considering that they do 20 fire damage straight up, regardless of how much health they're on. And here's this. Taken care of there. Don't need an Awake. And now it's down to the wire. I'm past my gold split for Awoken, because this run is a little slow, especially due to Scourge Fell. I choose to upgrade my Shattered Shell with a little more oomph, so it can kill Shadewings in the Temperant fight. And then I choose not to give it Quick directly. And then I skip everything else, even the Duplicate that I could use on a Restore, and I just go. And here is Seraph. And now I realize at this point that doing anything to Shatter Shell was completely pointless, seeing as he will have 0 attack for most of the rest of this fight. But as long as I can get to Relentless quickly, I know I'm safe. I've got a couple minutes, and the Seraph fight doesn't usually take that long, especially not in Awoken, which is one of the simpler fights. And I just match as fast as I can. The only reason why it's particularly slow here is because of the death animations. On plays where it doesn't have death animation, it goes very quickly. And again, I'm not really sure what the deal is with the lag on the footage here. I will apologize for this at least 6 times in the recording, I think. But here's Relentless, and I play everything out, and just wait for everything to die, and for me to rejuvenate through. And Seraph slowly, eventually dies. 54 minutes, 0 seconds, and 0 milliseconds. This is right on it. 54 minutes flat. And that is, as of recording this, at least a new world record. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do like and subscribe. And if not, please comment down below with what I can improve. Have a good one. Bye.